Welcome to Dare to Lead, a Hallian podcast, the show that empowers you to navigate leadership, career and business in today's dynamic landscape. I'm your host, Stuart Fry, CEO at Hallian. We're thrilled to be joined by Frank Amankwah, CTO Iraq Digital Asset Oasis on today's episode. Frank is at the forefront of driving technology strategy, architecture and information security while fostering innovation and leadership in high-performing teams. With a career spanning roles at Rain, Emirates Airline, Amazon, and top financial institutions like Goldman Sachs and BlackRock, Frank brings deep expertise in navigating organizations through rapid change. Now let's get into the chat. Hi Frank, welcome to the show.
Hi Stuart, good to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. Before we dive into some of the pieces around leadership, do you want to tell us about your early career and how you got to where you are today?
Well, that was a great question. So my career started in the early 2000s. My first, I'd say, real job was as a data analyst and desktop engineer for HSBC in the UK, right? I was lucky to work for a fantastic team of people led by a guy called Trevor Diggins. I'm sure if he watches this, he'll be blushing because I've called his name out. But that was really my foundation of my career. I worked for Trevor for about 3 years. I learned quite a lot from him in terms of how to build and lead a team of very diverse people. Then I did 2 years working for another manager at HSBC. So I'd say my career started out in 2000 when I worked for HSBC.
Okay, wow. And what were you like before that? What did you do at university?
So at university, I studied information systems and management. I actually did my university degree part-time while I was working. I grew up in Ghana originally. I left in 1997 to the UK to start university. Unfortunately, at that time, to get home fees, because we had a British passport, you had to have lived in the UK for 3 years. Obviously, we hadn't, right? And my mum, at the time, single mum, could not afford to pay international fees. So I decided to start working and wait those 3 years to get into university. When that time came, I was earning a lot of money at the time for my age. And I was like, I'm not going to give this up and go to university. Yeah. So I found myself a part-time course in University of London at Berber College. So I studied information systems and management for 4 years alongside my career start at HSBC.
Nice.
Yeah, so I didn't have a traditional university background. Yeah.
Okay. Was that the first job when you came to the UK, HSBC?
Yes, the first one.
Okay.
I did a few odd jobs as you do when you come in, but my first professional job was at HSBC. Yeah.
Fantastic. And what about your kind of early life before that? Where do you really feel you kind of shaped your career?
I grew up in Ghana. From age 11, I attended Achimota School, which I always say is the best school in Ghana. Not everybody agrees, but we all believe it. Spent 7 years there, so I did my O-levels and A-levels there. In the 7 years I was at Achimota School, I was part of a cadet corps. And I believe, from age 11, that's where I found my love for leadership, right? Obviously, cadet corps, very military, very structured. Yep. By the time I was in the third or fourth year, I was being roped into leadership roles. When I was in Form 5, I became the regimental sergeant major. So I was leading a battalion or two of people. I remember I used to take my teams on drills. We used to go out horse riding. We used to go, do driving range trips and that kind of thing. So I think I discovered my love for leading people at a very tender age. And I think that has sort of followed me through my career to date.
Yeah, beats the Scouts. That's what I was in the UK, and I didn't last very long there at all.
Yes, I never got to join the Scouts, but yes, I think Cadet Corps is much better than the Scouts.
Who was your kind of role model growing up?
I think I had several role models, but the person who maybe I looked up to the most was my grand uncle, my grandmother's older brother. Reason being that he was an architect. Okay. And he was the only architect in our family. He got to leave Ghana quite early in his career and worked in Saudi Arabia. Okay, so he was a really, really successful architect in Saudi Arabia, also worked in the UK for a few years. So we all looked up to him, right? And my aspiration was to become an architect one day, because obviously that's one of the most successful males in the family. You sort of look up to them. When I went to the UK, I actually lived with him for a few years as well, right? So he also helped to shape my path that I went down in the UK. So I say he was the most memorable role model. The thing about me is I don't pick just one role model, right? So I learn from lots of people, whether, with direct contact or remotely, right? But if I look back, in my grown-up years, he was probably biggest role model.
What was the biggest challenge moving from Ghana to the UK?
I think it was a bit of a culture shock because I'd never traveled out of Ghana before I got to UK in '97. So coming to the UK and having to settle into a new place, find new friends, was a little bit challenging for me. One of the things that I didn't get used to very early was the pub culture. Right?
Yes.
Well, as you know, I come from the UK, right? A lot happens in the pub, right?
Yeah.
Deals get struck, job offers get made, But I learned very quickly that I had to learn how to socialize, and a good beer, a good Guinness at the pub, was a typical way to break the ice with people. I think my time at HSBC with Trevor's team was quite formational for me because they had a real social life. And I think that's where I sort of let my head down and learned how to take a pint or two.
Yeah, we're coming from working in the cadets and then being a leader, then going to HSBC. Were you quickly earmarked to someone who had leadership potential there?
So that's a very good question, right? So I think and I've done this a bit later on in my career, right? But I summarize myself as a young growing professional as somebody who liked to have fun, liked to learn, and get things done, right? So and I'll repeat this a bit as we go along because the pattern repeats itself, right? So I think when I joined the team, in I'd say a non-engineering role, okay? But there was a gentleman called Rufus Cable. And I hope he hears this because he made a big impact in my software engineering career. Rufus was a bit of a tinkerer, right? I remember he built a chess game that we could play from our desks, right? And that was the first time I seen online chess. This was many years ago before Big Blue became a topic. Rufus taught me to script, right? So automate things, right? So I learned automation from Rufus, and I was blown away. I was like, wow, right? With a few lines of code, you can do this. So I went on to automate quite a lot of the processes that we had in our team, and that was a getting done bit, right? I was noticed by one of my colleagues, and he encouraged my manager to put me on software development training, and that's how I became a software engineer. Even before I went to university, that's So I think being a leader is one thing, but I think we're all leaders. But getting things done was what got me noticed, and that set me up for success throughout my career.
Yeah, and I guess you've always been quite a hands-on leader by the sounds of it.
Very, very hands-on, very hands-on. I mean, as I've become more mature and grown, I try and be a bit more hands-off to allow my team to operate. But those who work with me and know me know that I'm very, very hands-on, very in the detail, very interested in how things work, and very, very interested in improving things.
Yeah.
I never settle.
Okay. Before we start talking about your career, been in Dubai a long time, favourite restaurants?
Oh, that's unfair.
You can only pick one.
Dubai is a foodie's paradise, right? Okay, so if I can only pick one restaurant in Dubai, I think it will be Nobu. It will be Nobu.
Yeah. Have you been to the new one?
No, I haven't.
Because they've got it at Atlantis Royal.
Royal, yes. We've been to the one in the Atlantis quite a few times. I just rediscovered that they do this lovely business lunch on a Saturday.
Yes.
We've been there twice already, right?
Nice.
Yeah. So Nobu is probably one of my favorite. There's another one, sorry.
That's okay.
I'll give another one. There's another one in Jumeirah. It's in the Four Seasons complex called Mimi Kakushi.
Yes.
That's my wife's favorite.
Yes.
Also a nice one.
Now, that's my wife's favorite as well.
Oh, there you go. There's a pattern emerging.
Absolutely. But I like Koya. Have you tried Koya?
Yeah,
Koya next door.
Koya once.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
I should try it again. I've been once, but I don't remember it.
Oh, every time we go there. They remodeled it recently. It's absolutely amazing. Amazing. So
hopefully things will come on then.
Yeah, definitely. We'll have to get the wives together.
Exactly.
Having studied at both University of London and Oxford, how did your academic background really kind of set you on your professional journey?
Right. So I think University of London, the 4-year degree I did at Birkbeck wasn't conventional. Right, so obviously, I had to put in quite a lot of effort to learn. But I think, my work ethic and my hunger for knowledge is what sort of drove me through that experience. It was an evening-based course, So you would learn things, but you wouldn't get the time in a typical university to really immerse yourself, sit in the library, do research. You don't really get that because you're working, right? So I'd say my undergrad was very, I wouldn't say light, but foundational. But my time at Oxford was also part-time, but it was that, for me, was where I discovered my passion for academics. So obviously getting to Oxford was not easy. Being at Oxford, you're surrounded by very, very bright people from all over the world. So you're stretched, you're pushed to think differently. I remember my course was a mixture of software engineering and system security. I discovered I wasn't very good at system security, right? Because my grades weren't great, but the engineering and the leadership side, I really enjoyed it and learned a lot, and was able to come out with some good grades, right? So I think the two together made up for maybe what I think I lost, not having a traditional undergrad degree. But I believe that learning and education is fundamental for leadership. We don't get taught a lot about what we do as leaders, during our degrees, but the ability to learn and have an open and growth mindset is what going through these courses gives you, and then you take that on in your journey as you self-learn the other things that you have to learn.
So, in your career, I guess you've always been really determined to continue learning, continue developing. Was there a part of your career or part of your journey where you thought, actually, I can never stay still. I need to keep moving. I need to keep learning.
Well, I think I'm a lifelong learner, right? So I think that I can't say I've thought about it, because I'm always learning. I'm always reading something. I've always got a book at hand. I'm always listening to I signed up to this brilliant app called Blinkist that summarizes books for you. 18-minute summaries of all books. I have a reading list of about 100 plus books that I've read, and about 100 plus that I haven't. Okay. So that 100 I'm going through a blink list. So I think I'm just somebody who's very thirsty for new knowledge. I don't think there's enough time in the day to acquire the vast knowledge out there. But I'm quite focused. I spent maybe the first decade of my career was focusing on my technical skills as an engineer. So I did a lot of certifications and attended a lot of hackathons and made sure that I was good at what I did. I think the second decade is where I discovered my love for leadership, even though I knew it was there. But when I joined GameSys, my manager, Kevin Pandoria, picked up that I was a bit of a fixer. So he handed me a team that was a little bit dysfunctional, and coached me and watched me turn that team around. Handed me a second team. I joined as a technical lead. In about a year or so, I was running a department of about 80 people with no leadership experience, right? So the natural talent was showing through. But then I realized that being a nice guy and smiling a lot and tapping people around their heads for doing a good job is not leadership, right? There was so much I had to learn. So I embarked on the second decade of my learning journey, which was understanding what leadership really is, understanding what my gaps were, and growing myself and the people that I met along the way. So did a lot of reading. I could build 2 leadership communities in the UK during that decade. One was, I'd say, a rookie community for Agile enthusiasts. Agile was the thing of the day. Yeah. The other was Agile leadership. Okay. And the goal for our leadership community was, I'm sure there's people out there with my problem, right? Got this huge opportunity to lead and haven't got a clue, right? So why don't you kind of get them together, share ideas? I remember the first meetup was 9 people. They're still very close friends till today. It grew to about 1,500 members over I think maybe 5 years. The Agile community, the smaller one, grew to about 1,800 people, and we cross-pollinated them, right? So we created opportunities for leaders like myself to grow in this one, and then we used those leaders to coach the newbies, right? Yeah. So, and then I realized that my other passion was seeing people grow, because those communities for me were I spent more time in the communities than I spent with my family, right? My wife was pretty angry with me. When I moved to Dubai, she was very happy, right? Because I left them behind.
Yeah, it must be hard going into a new team, maybe a bit of a, like you say, misfits, and trying to then turn them into a kind of cohesive unit. What were some of the skills that you used to create that within the team?
When you join any new team, and I say this to I say this to all bar raisers out there, right? Yep. It's a term I picked up from my time at Amazon. As a bar raiser, you have 3 options when you join any team, right? Option one, you blend in, right? You arrive, you got to see the lay of the land, right? So you don't want to be pissing people off too early. You blend in, you find out, who are the movers and shakers, who are the slackers, who do you have to get on your side, who do you have to stay away from. That's just survival, right? You shouldn't spend too much time doing that. The second piece, which is you raise the bar, right? And how do you do that, right? You find opportunities to improve processes, to mentor, grow people, to challenge the status quo. And the third option is to get out, right? I say you go these three options, but I do them in that order.
Yeah.
Right? So you got to blend in, you got to make an impact, right? And then you got to leave, because you never want to be the smartest person in the room.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're the smartest person in the room, blend in, raise the bar, find the next room.
Okay. Got a tough question for you.
Oh.
Who's the person that you think in your career you raised the bar the most on? Who was that person that you thought they've got something special, and you actually turned that into them being something special?
Wow. That's a good question. Let me process that. Okay. Yes. I think it's clear who that person is, right? So when I joined, I'll mention my name because I hope they listen to this. When I joined Emirates, I joined Emirates as a head of software engineering. So Emirates website, Emirates mobile app, some of the customer-facing things like the chatbots and that thing. Emirates was going through a technology transformation or transition. Just to set the scene, the app rating in the app stores were 2.7, very poor when I joined. The goal was to raise them, and when I left, they were at 4.7, right? So huge transformation. That didn't happen because I did anything special, right? The people were already there. But there was a little bit of dysfunction, a little bit of, I'd say, a bit of mediocrity, and a bit of an old school mindset for some of our technology leaders, right? I remember my manager. I had two leaders actually. Fayaz, who was my direct line manager, was a VP of engineering, and a gentleman called Jorge was a VP of delivery. Jorge was a very aggressive bar raiser, right? He was from the US, and we got on quite well, right? So when I joined, obviously new leader, I get to know the department. A lot of people would come to me to introduce themselves, blah blah blah. And one gentleman, I'll mention his name later, came to me and said, this is who I am. I want to learn from you. And I was like, brilliant. Okay, that's interesting. You're the first who's done it. So what do you want to learn? And he said, I want to be a world-class software engineer. I want to end up working in Amazon or Google or Facebook. I was like, okay, at that time I'd come from Amazon, right? So I was like, it takes a lot to get into those places, right? But I didn't say that to him. I said, fine. So, I asked him a few questions. I said, what's your code coverage for your software? And I knew it was poor, right? So he answered the question, and I said, why is it so poor? And he said, because my software delivery manager doesn't allow me to add code coverage. And I was like, are you nuts? Are you crazy? Right? You're an engineer, blah, blah, blah. I really laid it into him, right? Just to see how he would react. And I said, go away and don't come back to me until you've started that journey, right? So that's how we met. And he was a mid-level engineer at the time, but we became quite attached. And he would, I can be quite brutal when I'm giving that kind of feedback, right? It's a bit staged, but it's very brutal, right? Just to make sure that you get the message. He got it quite clearly. Fast forward maybe a year, he had been promoted, to be a senior engineer. He was leading a small team who were building the mobile web of our app, right? So some parts of the app mobile web, and the performance and the quality of that software went through the roof over that year. I still work with him and a lot of other people, but he became almost like a bit of a personal project, right? Because he wanted to go to Amazon. He has to earn the stripes, right? Fast forward, my second year, he was selected to lead the building of Emirates' new payment platform from ground up, right? So he built a team, took the team through their paces, came up with this brilliant, framework. When we got a new CTO join, he was highlighted and, met the CTO to present this new platform. Fast forward, towards the end of my tenure at Emirates, I think it was actually during COVID or before COVID, he came to me and says, I've been offered a new job. I was like, where? He said, Majid Al Futtaim. I was like, no, you can't go to Majid Al Futtaim, right? It's Facebook, Google, Amazon, right?
Yeah.
So he turns that job, really good job, by the way. He turns that job down because he listens to me. I was like, okay, fine. So he stays. He comes to me again. He says, I got a job at Google. What's the job? Software engineer. I was like, yes, you could go, but you wanted to be world class, right? So I want to get you to a software engineering manager level before you leave, right? So he turns down a job at Google. I'm thinking, this guy's nuts. But he's listening, right?
Yeah.
You know?
And all the time he's still building those apps. Yeah, keep doing it.
Yeah, he's still raising the bar because I have a clear exit for him, right?
Yeah.
You know, and it's to do at Amazon what I couldn't do. I never told him that, right? What did he do? Towards the end of COVID, when we're all jaded and coming out of COVID, he gets an offer at Amazon. His dad has a medical emergency. He wants to move back to India. He gets an offer at Amazon in India. It's not as good package-wise. I'm like, listen, this is, you're going to kill two birds. You're going to be with your dad.
Yeah.
It's a very critical time, and you're going to fulfill that dream, right? So take the job. He takes the same job that I had at Amazon, but in India.
Okay.
He's there for a year. He gets promoted to the next level up. That takes 5 years.
Right.
My boss had to work at Amazon for 4 years to get to that level. In a year, he's promoted to my ex-boss's grade, and he moves to Virginia. He's in Virginia now.
Oh, wow.
Right? So he goes and exceeds my...
Yeah.
That's the best story I can tell you. It's real, right? You know, when you find the right people with the right mindset, you know, I say fun, smart, gets things done, and you really, really push them, they can work wonders.
Yeah, I find the level of pride you get when you see people around you that you've mentored and developed, growing, becoming stronger leaders, better at their jobs, and even to the point that you see that they get married, they have kids and all those things, and you've had that little bit of influence into their lives. It's a legacy. It's a legacy. He'll be telling this story, the same story to people in Virginia. That's
and his name
great.
Is Avishek Chakraborty. Look him up.
Fine. Great.
It's not just him. Throughout my career, I've been very privileged to do a lot of this for a lot of people. But he's the one I wanted to call out. Amazing guy. And I'm sure he's going to do great things.
You've worked in a lot of different industries. You've been in gaming, you've been in government, you've been in aviation. Where do you feel has kind of had the most pivotal change in your career?
So that's a great question. I think they've all contributed one way or the other. My foundation in finance, investment banking, I think was quite pivotal to the way I think. I'm not an investor. I should be. I should have made a lot of money from trading. I'm not a trader, but I've learned about the fundamentals of finance. So I understand, how the financial world works. Working in gaming introduced me to entertainment, gamification, human psychology, dopamine, anticipation, right? So I learned, and again, because of my learning habit, right? So I didn't just look at a face value, I went into the detail, right? So the human psychology of addiction, right? So that's when I went deep into that. E-commerce, Amazon, I got behind the scenes of the world's best and biggest e-commerce giant that was disrupting all industries. So I got to see how it's done. It's not rocket science. It's just, smart people with clear vision and execution. So that was good. I only did a year there, but I learned enough, for the time I was there. Aviation, obviously, I'd say they're in the pleasure business, right? Travel, tourism, it's all about experiences, right? So that was also good to see how that is powered, right? What goes into actually giving you a fantastic holiday, right? Because holiday is not just about you being on the beach. It's about the beginning, right? The planning of the holiday, the booking, the selection, the discovery. It's the whole journey, right? And then at the end of it, you get some points that brings you back, right? So I learned that as well. I worked at Rain. Obviously, that was my entry into the crypto blockchain space. Again, I learned a few things. Obviously, from a small team of 20 engineers, I scaled the team to almost 180 and then back down again because of the downturn in the market and the black swan that hit us as a company. That really pushed me to my limits emotionally, mentally. But I also realized that, if you're surrounded by quality people with a shared vision, anything is possible, right? I respect my founders a lot for very, very fun, smart, get things done founders. Again, that's the pattern that repeats itself, right? Because when I spoke to Joseph, my ex-boss, the CEO, I was working at Emirates. I was working for a $20 billion airline. I was getting free business class flights. What problems did I have, right? I ditched that to go, work for a startup, right? Because I bought into the vision, right? So what I learned there, having that clear vision, clear mission, and surrounding yourself with the right people, anything's possible.
Yeah.
Then obviously going into Iraq, that for me was a bit of a mind blower, because I'm thinking, what am I doing in a government, right? Why would I want to work for a government? The reason I went to Iraq was two things. Obviously, when I heard the story, the vision, Sheikh Saud's vision for Ras Al Khaimah, I thought that's big, hairy, and audacious, right? My boss in Iraq, Dr. Samir Al-Ansari, very seasoned professional, served a few royal families in the UAE, had a distinguished 30-something-year career. I thought I could learn something from this guy, okay? So why don't you get outside your comfort zone and go try something different?
Yeah.
And 2 years later, we built the world's first free zone that is dedicated to Web3, blockchain, digital assets, and AI companies. We've signed up 350 companies. Hopefully by the time you hear this already.
Yeah.
We're coming up to our first anniversary on the 25th of October, where we're having an event in Ras Al Khaimah. So then again, join with a blank sheet of paper and a Sheikh's vision. And based on fun, smart, get things done, surrounded with the right people. My team is quite small, but very talented, very passionate. We did it again.
That's one of the great things about being in the UAE, though, is, blank sheets of paper and people's ideas get turned into reality. And
it's an execution.
Absolutely. I think this is the kind of place where 2 years experience can gain you 5 years worth of
Life
growth
experience. Yeah,
and it's just
it's amazing. And I think the level of UAE is that the opportunities are here.
Yeah,
right. I don't think. I love the UK. I was there for 21 years, but my growth in the last 6 years has been phenomenal.
Yeah.
Right. Without that 21-year foundation from the UK, I wouldn't have been able to do what I've done. But the UAE is a place to be.
Yeah.
At this time.
Yeah, absolutely. You've given great advice in your career to other people on how they set their career objectives and when to move, when not to move. How do you do that for yourself? Or do you let your wife do it?
My wife is my reasoning part of my brain, right? She calms me down when I'm going erratic. No. So I always say that when I take a job, I already have my next job in mind.
Right.
So that's my first advice.
Yep.
You must always have a long-term plan for your career. When I apply for a particular job, it's because I know what I want to do next. So when I start, I set the end and work backwards from there. Okay. I normally give myself a 3-year horizon. So if anybody who wants to hire me, know that I'm a keeper, right? But things happen, right? And the shortest I've ever done in a job is a year at Amazon. The longest I've done in a job is 5 years at HSBC. So that for me is my range. But you must give yourself at least 3 years in any role, right? So you start the job, you plan your exit, because then that will give you your trajectory of growth, what you need to do. Because the next job, you shouldn't be qualified for it when you do this job.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. Then, and set the bar quite high, because obviously if you drop, you can only drop halfway, right? And then create a clear learning path for yourself. What are the things? What does the job description of your next job look like? Go to Google, find the jobs, right?
Yeah.
See the gaps in your current profile, and that becomes your personal.
Very interesting, path. Yeah.
And I've done it for every single job I've done. I start, I know what I want to get out of it.
Great. Your leadership style. How would you describe yourself?
That's a great question. So I'm a bit of a chameleon.
Okay.
They call it situational leadership, but I call it a chameleon, right? So my natural style is, I'd say, a servant leader. I'm a natural style, right? I like to lead from the back. I like to create the environment where people can thrive and people can grow. I challenge people. That's the other side, right? But my natural side is more, servant leader. Obviously, they say you cannot be a wartime leader at peace and not a peacetime leader at war, right? So when I was at Rain, where we were I'd say on a war footing, I had to summon some of my other leadership qualities. Very direct, very directive, very hard negotiator, giving some very harsh feedback when it's required. So I think, I'm a situational leader. I pivot my leadership style because of my 7-year cadet. I have a commanding persona, right? My wife used to say to me, I'm not in the cadet corps. She hasn't said it very recently, so I'm sure I've toned it down, right? But that was a running joke in our household as we grew up, as a couple. I'm not one of your cadets, right? So that's a joke. So my communication style can come across as a little bit abrasive and a little bit direct. It's just because of that, and I'm aware of it, so I'm trying to. But to help my teams understand how I communicate, when I was at Rain, I came up with an acronym, Oreo. Okay, everybody knows Oreo, so it sticks in people's heads. And I say, I communicate down the Oreo. The Oreo top stands for opinions. We all have opinions, and I have plenty. Yeah. So if I tell you it's my opinion, you can discard it. Just enjoy it and discard it if you don't agree, right? And I give lots of opinions because they're free. Yeah. The R is for, what's the R? Oreo opinions, I've forgotten now, is for recommendations. If I make you a recommendation, it means I know something you don't know. Yeah. So you gotta take it serious. It's not mandatory to follow it, but just know that I know something that I can't tell you. That's why I've wrapped it in a recommendation. Okay. Then if I go further down the Oreo, it's getting a bit hotter now. Yeah. If I emphasize, take it serious. Yeah. Because if I get to the O, which is if I have to give you orders, you're fired.
Full disclosure, I'm going to steal that.
Everybody I share this with has the same reaction, right? Yeah. Like, what? Like, metaphorically fired, right?
Yes.
But I don't like to have or build a team where I give orders. Yeah. So if I have to give you an order, you've outlived your welcome. Yeah. You either go take me back up the Oreo. Yeah. Okay. So that's me. That's the comm style. Like I said at the beginning, I like to turn teams from groups of people or dysfunctional groups into high-performing groups. I love to use frameworks. One of my favorite frameworks is from a guy called Patrick Lencioni. He wrote a book called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. So, has 5 levels, starts with trust, right? Building trust is super important. If there's trust, then you get healthy conflict because people aren't covering their backsides, right? Yeah. They're conflicting about the work, not about their personalities, okay? With conflict comes commitment, right? Because if we're conflicting, yes, and we say, here's a decision, we all commit, we move on, right? Because it's not always a democracy, yeah? But you have to have that conflict. Everybody has to have their say, right? So you conflict, you commit, then I can hold you accountable. Because if you're not committed, I can't hold you accountable if you're not committed, right? Yeah. So accountability is from within, okay? Once I can hold you accountable, then I can guarantee results, okay? So that's a framework that I use to turn around my own teams, or I try and use to influence the teams that I join, right? So the leadership team. It's a fantastic book. It's written as a story, but it has all these nuggets of wisdom, and I've used it a few times in my career so far, and it helps. It's not a magic bullet, but it helps me get teams on the straight and narrow, and ultimately make myself redundant.
Yeah. There you go. I think, I'm maybe going to read that myself because I've got I mentioned this, I've got a strict routine in the morning. I'm up at 5. I do an hour's cardio, an hour's strength training, and we renovated our house recently. We put a sauna in there, infrared sauna. Very nice small sauna. But I get really bored really quickly, so I'll sit in the sauna and I'll be there 10 minutes, and I'll be like, how am I going to sit in here? So I've started listening to podcasts and audiobooks. Okay. So I'll definitely try that one out.
Yeah, try that one out. I mean, I think I mentioned earlier, I signed up to this app called Blinkist.
Yes.
I was actually selected as the number 2, or in the number 2 group in Blinkist for the number of books I read on Blinkist.
Oh, wow.
On Blinkist. Right? So Blinkist is this app where they summarize popular books. Yeah. And you can listen to the book in 18 minutes. So they pull out the key concepts, right? Okay. So if you don't have time to read the whole book, try Blinkist. Yeah. With the book, and then if you like it, you can read the whole book. Yeah. But it's a lovely book.
Lord of the Rings, man finds ring, throws ring in.
It's all in there. It's all in there. And the thing about Blinkist is if you read a book, it takes you down a rabbit hole on that topic, right? You got to come back for air and then go down another rabbit hole. Yeah. It's amazing. It's my drive time routine.
One of the things that is kind of a recurring theme is the challenges people face I think the Middle East maybe has this as a little bit of a unique challenge because it's a very transient place and it's also so multicultural. Virtually anyone can come here, get a visa and work here. How do you deal with that in these larger teams? At Rain, you had 180 people there. How do you deal with that when you've got different people based all around the world, different nationalities, different backgrounds?
So that's a very interesting question. I got asked this by the Rain founding team in my last interview, right? They said, we've got all these nationalities out here. And I said, obviously, if you don't manage it, you get these little cliques, right? Usually by origin. And they become little power plays, right? So what I suggested and what I try and do is to create an opportunity for these homogeneous groups to socially interact, right? So that in your work setting, you can remove that piece. And focus on building a high-performing, cross-cultural, cross-skilled team. Because we, human beings, have a need for socializing. Okay, it's part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And it's usually with people who we are comfortable with. So you've got to satisfy that need. If you ignore it, which happens in a lot of places, then it seeps into the team setting. But if people have a way to decompress, whether it's through social activities or whatever, and yes, I mean, sometimes I even pit the different countries against each other, right? Call it Olympics or World Cup, right? So that in the work setting, I can focus on building that, I'd say colorless, creedless team. Because it's super important. And it's a lot of work, right? So when you have I've suffered from it, I won't say which role, but when you have those little cliques forming, even in a small team, it's quite annoying because I just want to get the job done. My job is to get the job done, but I need to take care of the people. So really take care of the people is that create this opportunity for them to decompress and do the social things that we all need to do so that in the work setting, yes, we're still having fun, but the focus is on the prize.
I guess it's different if you're building a team as opposed to walking into a team and you've already got that kind of click set up.
It is different, but the challenges are the same. When you're building a team, you're in control. So you get to select, right? But when you inherit a team, but it's fun. In both ways, if you have the tools, the patience, and the love for people, it's fun.
So aside from that, when you're working with these, multicultural teams, what other techniques do you use to get people to kind of have one common goal?
So I mean, the several techniques. I mean, one of the things that I learned from the 5 Dysfunctions book is, to build trust. And trust, they say, you build it over time and you lose it with one bad event. You need to be vulnerable with each other. When I talk about vulnerability, I'm not saying, share your deepest weaknesses or secrets, but you need to understand where people are coming from. So you asked me a question about the beginning, what shaped my childhood, blah, blah, blah. When you understand that, you will know why I act a certain way, or because we all, I'm going to use the word baggage, but we all carry baggage based on our upbringing, our environments, right? So as a leader, you need to find a way to understand your people, almost going a little bit outside the professional sphere, because if you understand that, then you can understand how you can help them as individuals, okay? So that's the first thing. And as a group, the group must also share some vulnerability, right? You must understand the people you're working with a little bit, not too deep, but you must know how did they grow up, where are they from, both parents, what single parent homes, that type of thing, right? You can't pry, but it's good if you understand, because that creates some vulnerability and cutting people slack. Then you apply the tricks and the tools and everything else. But if you don't know the person, you don't know what lies beneath then you're treading water.
I got taught this early on in my career. There's a big difference between asking and understanding. Because a lot of people ask a question, how are you? But there's other people, the strongest ones who understand the answers and remember.
You're listening to understand, not listening to respond. So it's very important. And I think a lot of leaders are in a hurry. And they miss these cues, right? I'm very intuitive just as a person, right? So I pick up cues I'm a bit of a pattern matcher. I'm like ChatGPT. I match patterns, right? So that has helped me as a leader because I spot patterns and I spot problems before they actually manifest. I'm not always right, but 9 out of 10 times I'm right.
Yeah. Digital assets and blockchain, obviously massive at the moment. Loads and loads and loads of investment, loads of change in the kind of tech ecosystems. How do you think you're doing things differently at the moment?
So, as a free zone, our goal is to attract, nurture, and inspire talent and companies in these, I'd say, niche future sectors. Right? Obviously, our name, Digital Assets Oasis, makes us focus on that to start with, but we're really looking at, I would like to say, emerging technologies. Okay, how are we doing it different? There's 52 free zones in the UAE, and if we're the 53rd, we're late. No matter what we do, right? And I'm biased, right? I think we have the best digital onboarding journey out there. Hint, hint, plug. But what's going to make us different isn't being the best free zone, even though we want to be. We're so young, we're quite niche, but we're building an ecosystem. Right? We're building an ecosystem that will, once the companies come to us, provide them with what they need to grow, right? So companies usually go through 3 stages, the initial, seed stage, the growth stage, and the scale up stage, right? So depending on which stage you're at as a company, we have something for you, okay? We're early in our journey, so, we're not quite there yet, but what we want to do is to create this ecosystem that I like to call the epicenter of the blockchain and Web3 ecosystem globally, right? UAE, believe it or not, is attracting all these companies in, right? Dubai has done fantastic. Abu Dhabi has done fantastic. RAC is going to do fantastic, right? Because, like I said, we're already 350 companies in and we're only a year old, right? We're still finding our way. We're a startup, right? But we have some really big ambitions and a lot of support from the Sheikh and his investment office. So I believe we're going to be a force to reckon with. Give us a few years, but the goal is to build a huge community, become the epicenter of the community. What does that mean? Attract people in, create opportunities for learning, host events, partner with other event organizers, host podcasts like these, etc., hackathons, you name it, right? That's important. Right, because Web3 is based on community, okay? We're also building an ecosystem of strategic partners, technology partners, professional services companies, banks, legal firms, because this is a new area with a lot of misunderstanding and lack of understanding, right? So we need to bring in the professionals who can guide these companies on their journey, right? A lot of these companies are tech companies, but they need these non-tech services, right? Marketing, legal, accounting, HR, So we're building this very, 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 I'd say, high quality ecosystem of partners to help these companies on their journey. We're also, all startups and some big companies require certain knowledge on their journey. Right, that in the startup space, that knowledge you normally get by joining an accelerator or an incubator or whatever you call them. So we're obviously thinking about and going to put together something in partnership with potentially some of the world's biggest players in this space, so that once the companies join us, they have this service available to them, right? So that they can tap into this. I mean, ultimately, we're an oasis, but we also want to grow and eventually, have a few unicorns coming out of RAC, right? So we need to provide the companies with these services so that they can grow. We don't just take their license money and watch them, right? It is in our interest to grow them, because as they grow, we'll make more revenue from them, but ultimately, we'll be successful and attract more companies. When all of this comes together nicely, it creates, a nice recipe for a marketplace. Imagine, having 100 million members of our community. You do the math, right? If you have 5% conversion, that is huge business for us. Okay,
do you think the RAC is the next big thing? Because you've got Dubai people complaining about traffic congestion, cost of living. There's lots of opportunities here, but there's also lots of challenges. And I'm seeing lots of people from the communities I'm in moving out to places like RAC because the commute's not too bad, and they can work from home 2-3 days a week and those things. Do you see that RAC is maybe the next big place?
RAC is not maybe the next big place. RAC
It is
the next
there
big thing. I mean, for so many reasons. Obviously, I'm biased because I'm part of the team. But if you put RAC, Digital Assets Oasis aside, Ras Al Khaimah as an emirate, right, has a lot going for it. Okay, I mean, not to say the least, the entertainment space, it's going to host, I believe, the first, casino in the Middle East, and that's a big deal. Not everybody signed up to it, I know, respectfully. However, I think that is a bold move for Ras Al Khaimah as an emirate. It's not just a casino, right? A lot of entertainment is going to come into Ras Al Khaimah. There's a lot of hotels, right? I just heard that Nobu is actually building a hotel in Ras Al Khaimah. I only learned that Nobu has hotels, right?
Okay.
So there you go, right? And there's a lot of really big, solid brands opening up in Ras Al Khaimah, right? They've just announced a swath of Ras Al Khaimah called RAC Central, right, where they're going to build. If you think about one central trade center, where we are now in Media City, that's going to be the next huge ecosystem, not just for digital assets companies, but for companies in general, right? And there's obviously the swaths of land that I'm sure RAC is going to partner with other people to build. We already have a free zone called RACES, which is, I'd say, the mothership. And the RACES has got over 20,000 companies already in RAC and more coming, right? So if you do the math, Dubai took, 10, 15, 20 years to get where it is. I think RAC will do it in 10 or less.
Yeah. You've had a brilliant career. Like you've worked with some of the best businesses out there. You have got a very infectious personality. I think I've probably smiled.
Even with the Oreo?
Even with the Oreo, definitely. I've smiled during this podcast more than I ever do.
Amazing.
How do you manage to stay grounded when you're with your teams, you're working with your teams, you're working to deadlines, you don't stop smiling and being happy and bubbly all the time. How does that Frank come out?
I just remember something. One of my bosses, I think he was at GameSys, it was an ex-Amazonian. He looked at me and says, "Frank, you're a smiling ninja assassin," in his American accent. I think I'm just a happy-go-lucky chap, right? I talked about fun, right? So I was raised that way, right? I grew up in a happy home setting. My mother was a single mom. My grandmom was my other pillar, but at home, I grew up happy, right? So I have a cheerful personality. However, I think behind that cheerful personality is this very driven, very no-nonsense character, right? It's almost like this, iron glove with a wool covering. Okay, so the punch can be quite, punchy.
Yeah.
But I like to create an environment where people feel comfortable, people feel safe, right? Because I think psychological safety is super important, right? In any environment, even in the army, right? So if you can create an environment where people feel safe, and the body can only be in one of two states, right? Fight or flight, where cortisol and adrenaline are kicked in, or creative, happy, oxytocin, dopamine. You can't mix the two. So if you don't create an environment where there's laughter and there's high fives and hugging and everything else, you can't be creative. So why am I this way? Because I love creativity. My purpose, which I was living from age 11, but I found out during COVID when I was locked up and stressed and depressed like everybody else, is to attract, nurture, and inspire talent. That's my purpose, right? And I do it naturally. Why? Because I want to create a future where I'm old and rickety, where leaders are like me, and creating environments like the UAE. Okay, but my passion is building products that people love. Okay, so when I get to bring those two things together, I'm at my best.
How do you balance creativity, innovation next to operations, getting things done rather than letting people fly off with different ideas?
So that's great. So in my opinion, there's nothing like a dumb idea. So that's the first thing, right? Every idea is a good idea. There's just no for now. Okay, so we have this backlog of good ideas, right? And they keep flowing, right? And some of the best places I work, Games is an example. We have an idea-thon, right? So there's never a shortage of ideas. So that's the first thing, right? But having a focus on delivering customer impact and delivering it early and often is what drives innovation, right? If you need to wait 6 months for something, it's probably too late.
Yeah.
Right? I want to deliver you a version of it in 2 weeks. So you can give me, it won't be complete, but I want to get some feedback in a month, in 2 months, right? So iteration for me is super important, focusing on the impact on the customer, not just some gold-plated thing that Frank is proud of, but is it changing somebody's life? Is it impacting somebody's job? Is it reducing cost? Is it making money? Something that is measurable, right? So if it ain't measurable, don't bother, don't do it, right? So that's the discipline that I bring to my team, and ruthlessly prioritize, right? There is nothing like more than one priority one.
Yeah.
There's only one priority one. I mean, the business users, and I'm talking to my colleagues, they always try it on me.
Yeah.
1, 1, 1, 2, no. Of those ones, what's priority one?
Yeah.
Guys, so ruthlessly prioritize and try and make that a culture in your team. The rest, is history.
Well, one of the things I found tough in my career and always difficult is how do you pick out those leaders from a crowd, and how do you get them to buy into the journey of becoming a leader, if they want to, that is?
That's a great question. So, remember my purpose?
Yeah.
Attract. You can't pick them.
Yeah.
You attract them. They find you. It's like magnets. and every leader that I've coached has approached me.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And the ones I've tried to bring in, it's been a total disaster.
Right.
You can't bring them. You need to attract them. You need to live the dream. You need to so attract, nurture, inspire. You need to attract them, right? They'll come to you. You need to nurture them, right? So you need to challenge them, polish them, and then you need to inspire them, right? Be a role model. Let them see you do it.
Frank, it's been great having you here today. I've really enjoyed the episode.
Absolute pleasure, Stuart. Absolute pleasure.
Oh, great. I really enjoyed it. One last question then. How do you dare to lead?
I think I'll sum it up by saying you have to, as a leader, you have to be bold, you have to be brave, you have to be courageous. So that's let's park that aside. But I think one of the things that I have learned and I look out for in the people that I attract, people that I mentor, is the fact that capability without humility makes you a liability. So even though I say fun, smart, get things done, that's capability, but if you don't apply a dose of humility around that capability, nobody wants to work with you, right? You're good at your job, but nobody wants to work with you. The flip side, I say, it's capability with humility makes you stable. It gives you stability. And throughout my career, I believe that I've grown loads. I've learned a lot. I've got lots of experience, but not once do I talk about that, right? People like you talk about it, but I never have to refer to it, right? Because I approach everything I do with a huge dose of humility. I say if you have to say you're humble, you're not, right? So I also never say I'm humble. I let people say it, right? But it's super, super important to have that, So that's super important. And then last but not the least, I've said this a few times, is I believe that the people are here, right? Wherever you are as a leader. I also believe that the people are capable, right? It is in your power, almost like the cook, right, to come up with a recipe and mix those ingredients to make that dish. So that's what I'd like to leave you with.
Great, fantastic. Thanks, Frank.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure.
That's a wrap for today's episode with Frank, where he shared valuable insights on the emerging trends in the digital assets and transformation space and the importance of fostering leadership. Be sure to follow us on LinkedIn at Halion or visit www.halion.com to learn more. See you next month with more inspiring stories. Goodbye.